Welcome to another energizing episode of Coffee with Convery. Today we're brewing up some career inspiration with Amy Davies, the CEO of First30 and the author of What Employees Want. Amy's not your average business guru. She's a Doberman owner who's mastered the art of getting inside people's heads in a good way to revolutionize how companies attract and keep great talent. With over 2 decades of experience exploring what makes professionals tick, Amy's insights are like a secret decoder ring for the modern workplace. Her company, First30, is transforming everything from onboarding to outplacement, helping organizations create environments where people actually want to stay. Her latest book, What Employees Want, is like a treasure map for creating engaging workplaces. And since launching its first 30 in 2020, Amy's impact has gone global, with clients spanning North America, the UK, and South Asia. So grab that coffee, settle in, and let's get ready for some game-changing insights from the incredible Amy. Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to see you again.
Nice to see you as well. It's been a bit of a minute, but it's been great to catch up. And what I thought we might do is start with some rapid fire questions, just so the audience gets to know a little bit more about you.
Sure, and it can get me energized.
Exactly, exactly. So if we think about it, what is your superpower?
Well, I know that you think of me as having a different superpower, but one of my superpowers is that I'm good at coming up with new ideas. So some people call me Ideas Amy, and I take that as a huge compliment.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. So this is one of my favorite questions is all of our senses are always working and things, but I always like to hear from someone and understand what is their favorite smell.
Well, you'll laugh, but it is my dog.
Ah,
Yeah, because
yes.
I love him. And if I like have him close to me and I just, it's like the smell of a new baby. I'm
Yeah, it's
sure a
that
lot of
puppy
people think
smell.
that, but it's
Yeah.
like he's my little baby. So
Aw, I love that.
maybe not what you were expecting. And he's generally very clean. So
Good. Yeah. No, there's something about I too, it sounds silly, but I even my cat, I sniff him sometimes. He's so
yeah.
soft and cuddly.
And it's
Uh,
just a soothing smell,
it
because it's
is.
like your home.
That's exactly what it is.
Other
Awesome.
people might call it a stink, but
Yeah.
you and I think of it as a great smell.
No,
Yeah.
it's special. What's the best compliment you've ever received?
Well, I receive this compliment almost every day, Brian, and it is you have a beautiful dog.
Oh, I love that. Um, we all have sort of, whether it's guilty pleasures or for a good eat or two, but what's your go-to snack?
Well, either popcorn or
Yeah,
chips and potato chips and beer.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Well, that's
IPAs to be specific. I've graduated into the craft beer
ah,
arena. Yeah.
okay, okay. Well, maybe we do that instead of coffee when we see each other.
Okay, we've got a great brewery near my place, so
All right,
I'll
all
now
right.
lure you out here.
That's okay. That's all right. I love adventures. Thinking back to school, it doesn't matter if it's high school or university or college, but what was your favorite subject?
That is a really good one. It's probably recess. But no, in all truth, I was not a good student in elementary nor high school. But I really found my footing later. So when I had to get ready to apply for universities, suddenly I miraculously started becoming an A student. But my very favorite subject was sociology, which, if your listeners don't know, it's the scientific study of society. And I
Nice.
really was interested in how we interact and behave as groups. And that was pretty exciting to learn more about.
Interesting. Love it. We all start somewhere, and different guests answer this differently about paid jobs versus unpaid or what have you, but we all start somewhere. What was your remembering your very first job?
Yeah, my very first job that I remember was being a cashier at Shoppers Drug Mart.
All
And for
right.
those, I mean, obviously people will understand it's a drugstore if they're not. I know you have listeners around the globe, but yeah, it's just the best known drugstore chain in Canada.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
wasn't like glamorous though. I had to wear a polyester uniform that never seemed to have a nice smell or feel to it.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would it be?
Amiable.
Amiable. I love that. I love that. All right, let's jump in. So
Okay.
I know you say you get people. Can you share a moment when you realized you had this superpower and how it shaped your career journey?
Yeah, so even as a child, my parents they gave me the nickname Constable Amy. I don't know that that was a good thing. They meant it as a good thing. But as many of us going through life, and I know you have younger listeners, and I certainly hope
Mhm,
they don't go what I went through, but I had about 10 years ago, I had a huge trauma in my life. And I realized that it was caused because of the fact and trauma, by the way, I don't want to make it sound all depressing because this is it actually made me appreciate life so much more. And every day I am just so grateful for the wonderful people around me and everything that I have the freedom to enjoy. However, I did recognize at that time that I was a magnet for toxic people. And one of the reasons was because I was very insecure. People might not be able to recognize that in me today because I've changed a lot and grown a lot, in large part because of this experience.
mhm,
But what ended up happening was I realized that this was a pattern in my life. And I really started studying personality disorders. And one book in particular was Dr. Hare's Without Conscience, The Psychopaths Who Live Among Us. And it was from learning about the different personality disorders and how you never blame the victim, but how maybe I was contributing to the
mhm,
situations I was in by being empathetic and understanding to people who did not deserve my empathy or my time.
mhm.
So really being able to put that learning into practice, I was able to kind of reshape my life. And I think that it's the people around me and how people react to me now. I am not a target for these people anymore. And I think that's when I really realized that I'm getting much better at understanding who people are before and not listening to what they tell me actually, but listening for what I'm seeing in their behavior. And that
Interesting.
has really helped me. Um, and I recognize it every day in the interactions that I have. And I've built a lot of strength from that experience.
Thank you so much for sharing that and the background to
Mm.
that, because I think there's a lot of listeners here that can identify with various moments in their life that they've experienced some of these things. And it's also tough when you're a trusting person to navigate some of that and realize, that there are different personalities, there are givers and takers, and all the different things you have to kind of work through in your life and surround yourself with the people that really lift you up.
Ryan, if I may just give two very quick
Sure,
and
go
impactful
for it.
pieces of advice. Number one, relationships take time and to develop. And one of the mistakes I was making was putting a lot of faith in relationships that developed too quickly. So if you meet someone and they want to be your best friend right away, or you're dating someone and they want to move in right away or get married right away and whatnot, that should be a red flag to you.
Mhm.
That is not how life works. We have to put in the hard work and time in order. In most cases, there's always going to be one anomaly, but for the most part. Number two, if you meet someone and you feel too good in their company right away, I'm not saying that that necessarily means something awful about them,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
what I want you to do instead of falling into that feeling and just letting all letting yourself go is I want you to stop and ask yourself, why do I feel so good with this person? And rather than just believe everything they tell you, start questioning them more than you would other people. Because people that are toxic people, they are very good at charming you in the beginning. And so that those
Great
I know
advice.
you have a young audience, and I just
Yeah.
always feel compelled to give that advice. Along with reading Dr. Hare's book, those are some of the things you can do to protect yourself because there's more people like this around in everyday life that they're learning, they mimic the behavior that gets them what they want, and they know how to charm you.
It's great advice, and thank you for sharing that additional insights because I think it's so needed, and it's great to hear it from someone like yourself. From pet care to corporate insights, your career path has been anything but ordinary.
Yeah.
What's the craziest job transition you made, and what did it teach you about the adaptability in the workplace? Because that's such an important skill to have right now. All the time.
Well, yeah, and I can talk about it from the perspective of, I'm going to say that it was when I left corporate and started my own business. And I've done that more than once, by the way.
Yep.
I actually, not surprisingly, like you said, I ran a dog walking business for a few years, which was
I
surprisingly
love that.
lucrative. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
bet.
yeah, it was. And so low overheads, there was tons of
Yeah.
clients out there. But anyway, it was a very difficult business to run. But what happened when I left corporate the last time and started First 30 was I realized how resourceful I was and how many skills I had that I didn't even know that were inside of me. And it's really was very exciting to it's a lonely journey. You and I
Mhm.
were talking about it before we went live. It can be a really lonely journey to be an entrepreneur, but it can also help you understand what you're made of. I don't recommend doing that right out of the gate. I recommend having a full career and then launching into something because
Yeah.
you learn so much. And I would say to anyone listening, the most important thing you can do is be a sponge. Even learn from the
Yeah.
people who you don't think are doing a great job because you learn what not to be, and then start to learn and find mentors. They might not even know you're looking to them as a mentor, but learn from them. And honestly, when I left corporate, I was just so surprised because, as you know, when you're in a corporate job, you're kind of put on one track,
Yeah.
generally speaking,
Yeah.
and you get to use some of your skills, but there's a whole world of skills living within inside of you that you won't know that you have unless you have the opportunity to explore them. And it's been really exciting. So that was the biggest kind of aha of
Hmm.
changing careers. Yeah.
I think it's interesting because so much has shifted, and we know we're such in a interesting time right now, just generally speaking, with everything going on in the world. Things are definitely changing at a rapid pace, but there's also so many things that are going on, and as we know, every day we have our own lives and things are going on. But I'm hearing from some of the young people right now that they're not sure they want to go into corporate. They may want to do something else and start an entrepreneurial position or do different things. I do believe what you said, like you need some grounding and some
Hmm.
basis for that, I think, to get going. But I liked what you said about the skills piece. And I'm wondering if we can just think about that a little bit more. Like how
Hmm.
would you advise someone to look at their skills and passions and maybe ignite that, even in a current situation where they might be at corporate? Do you have any
Yeah.
advice? Yeah.
Well, listen, being resourceful is one of the best skills that you can bring to your employer. So looking for the opportunities outside of your role to contribute. So if there's a cross-functional team that you can join, if you get the opportunity to do different types of projects, like hold your hand up and do those projects, get involved, especially ones where you get to interact with different departments in the business and learn about them. um, One of the best skills we can have, and it's not the traditional marketing, is to understand how to use marketing technologies, like simple ones. Like I love Vengage.
Okay.
It's a competitor with Canva. Sorry,
Oh, I've
Canva. I
never
like
heard
you
of it.
too.
I have never heard of
Yeah,
it.
I think it's Canadian owned.
Okay.
They're just some different templates. I just
Yeah,
started
yeah,
with
yeah.
that one, so it's the one that I like. But learning how to use those. So I recently, you'll laugh, Brian. I joined my local Lions Club, and it's often something that people who are retired will do. But I just said, you know what? I probably have a lot of skills that I can share with this organization, but I'm learning from them.
Yeah.
About different things. Like we just ran a used book sale at our local harvest festival over the weekend. Um, Used books are in high demand, by the way. I was shocked. We raised about $1,700 or $2,000 for charity in one
Amazing.
afternoon. Yeah. So I could bring my skill set to them, but by interacting with people who may be at a different age life stage than I am, I'm learning a lot too, and I'm learning how to put these little fundraisers together, and it's exciting. So getting involved beyond your workplace, in your community. I think for me, I didn't grow up being religious. I'm not religious, and my point in bringing that up is that I didn't have a church to go to or a synagogue to go
I
to
see. Yeah, yeah,
be part of a community. So joining like a non-religious, non-partisan community organization, I found extremely beneficial. And it was recent, but it's been a lot of fun. So get
yeah.
involved in your workplace, put your hand up. Resourcefulness is a funny thing. I'm not sure you can teach it. I don't know. But I did not know I was as resourceful as I was until I left my,
There you go.
day job.
There you go. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Some great ideas and tips there.
Yeah.
Now, we know first impressions matter, and that, whether it's at networking or meeting new people, but even in the onboarding experiences that companies and organizations put together, because your very first day really
Yeah.
makes you feel about, did I join the right place or not? I mean, that's as
It really does. It
right?
really
Like
does.
it really does. I
Yeah.
mean, you and I both in our careers have probably had some really cool ones and some really ones like scratch my head, did I just come into the wrong place?
Yes.
But if you could maybe think about some of the listeners who are also small, medium enterprises, companies looking to make that impression on their employees better with sort of that onboarding experience. What would you say you'd recommend some ideas there? And
Sure.
please tell me it includes puppies.
Oh,
Just kidding.
listen, I wish that it did include puppies.
Yeah,
What I would say is one thing that organizations have to recognize is that we have a cognitive response to joining a new organization in the same way we have a cognitive response to interacting with new people. Like you and I met last year for the first time. I had a
yeah,
great impression of you, and that helped me build a positive belief system. So imprinting is a rapid learning process that whether our employers want us to or not, we are experiencing. We're not even aware it's happening. So from those first interactions, and that means the first moments of the first day, if somebody's late to collect you at the front desk or late to
yeah,
show up for your first, that is starting to make you feel less confident or more confident in your new employer. So those very first, so first of all, when someone is logging in or coming into the office, be there immediately to greet them. I don't know about you, Brian, but I certainly went through this. You're sitting there your first day and you're nervous as
uh-huh.
anything. And you start playing all these scenarios in your mind. You're like sweating. Like I'm not even someone who normally sweats, and I'll be like, oh my goodness, I'm so nervous, right? Um, so one of the ways to get around being late and to help out your new employee, the biggest piece of advice I have for employers, let your new hires start late on their at least on their first day and leave early on their first day. Encourage that behavior. So few organizations do it. I do not understand why. A lot of roles, maybe some roles are a bums and seats game, right? Like it's like you're on a factory line. I understand. But even then, letting people start late will mean their
Yeah,
manager has time to get all their stuff done. If you have them walk in at about 9:30, 10 o'clock, everybody's fresh and ready for them. The managers had their coffee, they've sent the emails they need to send, and then they greet them and they have the energy for that. And then letting them leave early because, oh my gosh, it is so tiring. Like, I'm an extroverted person and I still find first days, I feel like I always say it like a smiling bobblehead all day, right?
that's it.
And
You're
just like
right. It's
pace the amount,
exhausting.
yeah, pace the amount of information. Like I always say that onboarding should be not be an avalanche of information, it should be a babbling brook of information. So not people don't need to know everything all at one time. Give them information slowly and introduce them to people slowly, right? Because we start to kind of when you meet too many people all at once,
Yeah,
I think it's difficult to put your best foot forward by the 10th or 15th person. And
Right.
you can get impatient too, and people get headaches. And like, make sure the person is well fed and hydrated. And if they drink coffee, like I'm a big coffee person, I'm sure you are too,
Yep.
given the name of your podcast. So make sure they have everything they need to be comfortable physically and emotionally their
It's
first few
it's
days.
such good advice because as I'm thinking about it, so many experiences I've had or places I've seen, they treat it almost like an onboarding day when if it's truly an experience, you can spread it out and you can make it more, and that's more impactful when it's over even a few weeks, right? Where you're
Yeah.
getting your arms and legs around things. And I think if you put some thought to developing that too, it really will help that employee get engaged in a quicker way almost because they're having that time to look, reflect, the next day is something else, right? So great
Yeah, it's
advice.
not a sprint, it's a marathon.
No, no,
Yeah.
exactly. And I too have been in that sweaty position. I think we all have. So you're all like, do I have sweat? Can they see it
I
on my
know.
forehead? I'm like,
Yeah.
but
It's an
it's a good,
awful feeling.
it is, it
Yep.
is. So I think if people start also thinking of onboarding as a welcome, maybe that would be a better way to frame it too, just in the way that they design it. But
Yeah.
thanks for
And
sharing that.
everybody loves swag. You
Uh-huh.
make people feel like they belong almost immediately if you give them a coffee mug with the company logo. It's so simple
Exactly.
to do. Yeah.
Exactly. So in your book, A Spark in the Dark, you talk about thriving in a reorg world, which is happening every day. We
Yeah.
see it every day with our friends, people in talent, young people trying to get into organizations, things being reworked. For our young listeners facing this uncertain job market, which many of them tell me is keeping them up at night, worried, not sure what to do. What's your top kind of tip for turning this kind of, I'll call it chaos, into an opportunity?
Yeah. Um, may I give just a couple only
Absolutely.
because um I
Tips are
feel
good with
like
an S. That's fine.
yeah, and the reason I say that is because I know that like I have friends and family like who are neurodivergent, and I think that
Hmm.
sometimes we give our first piece of advice may not resonate with people who are, who are ADHD, who are on the spectrum. So I like to give a couple.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, the first one is network. Network when you don't need to network. Network when you have a great job. Network when you are obviously when you're looking for a job. Network when you're in a great job and you know you're going to start a business. And by networking, what I mean specifically, because it's a very broad term, be present. If you're a professional who relies on a platform like LinkedIn, don't only use it, and don't only use it when you're trying to find a job.
Yeah.
Use it when you have a great job. Engage with other people's content every so often. Write your own content. Keep people understanding who you are and what your personal brand is. The biggest compliment that I had
Mm.
when I was in corporate, because I was in people like I called said ideas Amy. My old role, I used to be insights Amy because I was doing employee and consumer research for companies. So they would say, my network would say to me, like my network, the people that I knew professionally
Yeah.
would say to me, Amy, I've never really thought of you as attached to any business, even though I worked for some big businesses, Wrigley, Unilever, Rogers. Like they thought of me as Insights Amy. They thought of me as just an individual who happened to be at different companies. So that is one thing that I would say that people should
And
do.
and that's a beautiful thing, actually,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because you're still keeping your own person,
Yeah.
um, and working for these different organizations, which I love the way you frame that because I think that's so important. Because sometimes we get lost in the company we work for, the title we have, and not in what we're bringing.
And if you're one of these people, like my background of my LinkedIn is First30 because it is my business.
That's
It
right.
is Amy, right?
Yeah,
But if you're working for another employer, that should not be your LinkedIn background. That,
I agree.
your LinkedIn background should be something that has to do with you professionally.
Thank
So
you
I
for
really want
saying
to,
that. I am
yes.
like the biggest believer in that, but I always see people switching their backgrounds to the menu of the day, right? And
Yes. Yeah. You
Nope.
you don't your LinkedIn is your own. You are
Yeah.
not, your business has to do the job. They've got the money. They've got to do the job of marketing themselves. But for every, like, what the other piece of advice I would give is to make sure that you are in command of your own career. You're not waiting and relying on other people, whether it's internally or externally, to guide. Like, you can look, of course, you could read A Spark in the Dark. You could get that guidance. Like, that book is written to be more of a big sister to someone who is an ambitious professional.
Hmm.
But you don't necessarily have to read that book. What I would say is just understand the sentiment from that book is no one is going to do it for you. Unless you're from like a really wealthy family that's really invested in your future and is guiding, like putting you in jobs that you may
Yeah.
or may not be qualified for, you are going to have to take control, and you're going to have to look for the promotions yourself. You're going to have to work for those promotions. You're going to have to switch. Like, I switched jobs when I felt like I had used my skill set and I wanted
Hmm.
a new challenge, and I wanted more money
Yeah. Yeah.
and a better title. I won't pretend I wasn't a bit of a title chaser for a while there.
Yeah.
Um, so you have to find those opportunities yourself. No one else is going to do it for you. That means also skilling up. So if you see opportunities, whether you're a developer, whether you're a marketer, you may have to go and find opportunities to develop yourself. Companies are moving away from paying for new skills and going to conferences and all of those things. You might have to start financing some of that yourself.
That's right.
And just overall, it's like I said before, be resourceful. Like, that is the best piece of advice. Whatever that means for you, your personality, your industry, be resourceful.
Incredible advice. And I couldn't agree more with everything you said. It's really helpful, I think, to the listeners and job seekers to hear your point of view and some of that advice because it's something that I've thought about as well with this whole defining who you are on LinkedIn and being okay with humanizing that experience of who you are because at the end of the day, we're looking for human beings in these organizations. We're not looking for robots, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that sometimes people too play too much to the template of a LinkedIn to be just
Mm-hmm.
of that. Thank you so much. I think that's really helpful. Um, I think the other thing is, employees, well, all employees come with different wants and needs, but if thinking about some of the employees you've spoken to and job seekers over the years, what do you think is the most important things that job seekers and employees are looking for for organizations that they join?
What are job seekers and employees looking for? That's the
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Yes. Okay. I want to make
Sorry.
sure it's not, because they're two different things. Sadly, they should be the same.
Right.
I think that we don't
True,
realize it.
true. Maybe job
Yeah.
seekers first. Yeah. Sorry.
I don't think we realize it until we're in it, but we are subconsciously looking for psychological safety for sure. And psychological safety in specifically means that you feel um, good bringing up new ideas. You feel that you have permission, and there's acceptance around not agreeing with something that your boss says about how you should run a project, right? That's psychological safety, where it's almost that subconscious feeling like, I'm feeling comfortable going to work. I'm not scared to say
Hmm.
something to my boss. I'm not scared to interact with a colleague of mine. So I think that we are all looking for that. But the more obvious things, I think a lot of employees are looking for somewhere, uh, first of all, somewhere they can stay for a while. And I
Yeah.
really have a trouble with that one, because I tell people that they should look at every single job as a fractional or a contract. They shouldn't look at it as permanent, because sadly, there is almost no such thing now as a permanent job.
I
You
I
should
agree.
always be prepared to lose your job tomorrow. I've seen crazy things happen, Brian. You would think
Yeah.
that someone was super safe, and literally a leader changed in an organization. 3 weeks later, that person was terminated,
Yeah.
not even for their fault of their own, right?
Yep.
The other thing that employees want, well, they certainly want flexibility, and that can mean something different. Like
Yeah,
we love our pets. I want to have flexibility to walk my dog at lunch or whatever it is, right? That might be a big ask, but maybe I want that opportunity once a week, or I need to take my dog to the vet, right?
yeah. I
Um, but the biggest thing people want is, can you guess what it is?
was gonna say money, but that's
No, it isn't.
no. Because it is tough right now buying houses and stuff too. But
Oh, for sure, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that, and not saying that it doesn't matter, it
No, no, I
certainly
know.
does, but there's something that matters even more.
Oh, I don't know. What is it? I'm curious.
They want hybrid or they want to work from home.
Interesting. And we're
Yeah,
seeing a lot of that in the news.
we're seeing a lot of that in the news. I'm disappointed by the way things are going
Me too.
myself. Yeah, as someone who was a single mom for quite some time, it would have made my life. It would have radically changed my life for the better to have that flexibility. And there's all kinds of reasons why people would want that type of flexibility. Companies are just not meeting employees where they are in that way. And I think that it's to everyone's detriment and including the environment, actually.
Yeah, I might invite you back to do like a panel on this topic because with talent leaders, because I think it's becoming scary of how much it's going like pushing everyone backwards to that
Mm-hmm.
5 days a week. And and then on the same token, some of these organizations are talking about their environmental involvement and making things, and then yet we're adding all this carbon footprint
Yeah.
because people are
Yeah.
going back and getting back into the office. So I think you've sparked me to think about inviting you and a few of us. I want to hear from a few people on this because I think
Mm-hmm.
it's we know it's a talent play in talent. Like we know people are going to say, well, if that's the case, I'm starting to look right now or whatever because the flexibility that they have had. And I'm not saying it to be, completely anyways, I think there's a value to the hybrid model myself, and I enjoy
I do too. Yeah.
being with people, and then I also
Yeah.
enjoy having the space to learn new
Mm-hmm.
things and to do
Mm-hmm.
things. And that's a big thing about upskilling right now, where people are complaining they don't have the space to actually upskill because they're
Right.
on the road, they're traveling, they're in the office or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's another podcast for another day, but thank
Totally.
you.
I'll
I
be
agree with you.
happy to do
All right, let's do it. We'll get a few people.
it.
You tell me a few people, we'll get them all together. We'll cover that
Okay.
one. Um, I wanted to talk about cultural differences in the workplace. I think this is super important. I told you before we were starting, I just recently did a talk with young students about networking with cultural intelligence
Mm-hmm.
because when you walk into a room, there's a lot going on and all the different people that are there. But from your experiences and you've expanded First 30 across continents, what's been your biggest like aha moment or thing you've learned from cultural differences in the workplace, either from your own experiences or what you've seen?
Yeah, I do think that it's really good to take the time to actively listen to people and what they're saying and give them the space. I'm a talker, right?
Me too.
It took me a little while to learn how to shut up and listen, but now that I do, and I think that sometimes we have to, the biggest thing I think we have to recognize is that we are, and there may be argument about this, but this is what I have heard and I understand to be true, so people can tell me if it's not true, that we are attracted to people that are like us in some way, whether it be professional, whether it be cultural. So we might look for other people like us in a room, and
Hmm.
trying to breaking that habit is very good for you. Expose yourself if you're in a company to people who, like, I'm extroverted. I really worked hard to learn more about people who are introverted because I wanted to be able to set them up for success too. And the best example I could give, and I know that's not cultural, so, but the best example I could give of that is that I used to put people on the spot in meetings and have presentations that were like they were seeing for the first time. All the extroverts in the room were totally fine with that, right? And I was totally fine with that. My poor introvert colleagues wanted time to think and they didn't, their voices were
Hmm.
not being heard. So I went
Very
back and I
interesting.
realized from now on, everybody is getting the presentation, whether they've asked for it or not, 3 or 4 days before I present it to the room, so that I give my introverted colleagues a chance to digest the information. Some people, depending on their culture, are not going to be as inclined to speak up either. That there's hierarchy can be very important and have different meaning depending on the culture you're from. So
Hmm.
helping people from different cultures understand that they're in a different space, and how maybe they need to speak up because otherwise they'll never get their voice heard. So understanding how to coach people, but putting yourself in different situations with different groups of people whose cultural background and life might be very different than yours will help you understand. Don't take, like, it's so true, but like, don't judge a book by its cover. Just because
Yeah.
somebody presents a certain way, once you start listening, you might
Hmm.
hear different things. Like someone who comes across as really confident might actually be super insecure, and you
Yeah.
won't find out until you spend a little more time investing in them.
Great advice. And I think this whole topic around cultural differences in the workplace is another topic in itself that we
Yeah,
could
it's a
talk
big
about.
one.
It's huge. It's
Yeah.
so huge. And I've been in those situations, like you've said, where you're thinking like, why isn't this person understanding what I'm saying? And it's not, or they respond differently than you expected.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then you take it personally versus like, no, it's because it's because they have a different
Right.
experience, right? Or
Right. And we were talking about people who are
I
neurodivergent,
agree with
right?
this
They
big
might
time.
respond totally differently depending on, what they are, their life experiences, if they're ADHD, if
That's
they're
right.
on the spectrum. Like, we need to work through that and give people a chance to succeed no matter what the environment is. Because I'll tell you, it's often the quietest person in the room who has the best ideas. They're just not being heard because people like you and I might be talking over them, right?
That's right. That's right. That's right. Um, One last thing, and then I'll ask if you have anything you wanted to cover that we didn't. But as someone who's navigated multiple career pivots, what advice would you give to a young person who's feeling stuck or unsure about their career situation?
Well, for one thing, prepare for a change. Like, it's so boring, Brian, but it's
Yeah,
so
it's
necessary.
true.
The one thing that we don't like psychologically, it affects our well-being than almost anything else, is to have the feeling that we do not have the power over our own outcome. And I deal with a lot in the layoff and outplacement space, right? And I'm always talking to clients saying, like, as much as you can empower people to help
Hmm.
them kind of take control, the better, because they will feel psychologically, they will feel so much better. So what I would say is, if you're in a situation where you're feeling stuck, get your collateral together. I work with a great person. Her name's Camara Toffolo, and she's got a YouTube channel with a ton of free advice for job seekers, like a ton, and it's amazing. She works with me at First30 as well.
Awesome.
And I've followed her for years, and I know she is the best because I see the results of the work that she does. So I would follow her and look for people who are I would just look for people even online that you can sort of
Yeah.
follow and learn from. So that's one thing, because unless you're prepared to change, like, you're still going to be stuck. Then
Mm.
find out things like, I say, and it's like everybody says this, so I'm not sure it's the best advice, but it's the only advice I have, is like, think about what you're good at, what you enjoy, but also what you can do to make money. Don't miss the money piece, and
Hmm.
put the, like, in the Venn diagram that everyone's talking so much about these days. But put that Venn diagram together, and then see what's in the middle. And like, I read What Color Is Your Parachute when I was young.
Yeah.
And that helped direct my career. Like, it was life
Amazing.
changing for me. So I would do things like that. Like, it takes work. It takes work. I don't have one easy answer. There's going to be a lot of exploring to do. But what I would say, if you're stuck, don't stay there. Move, keep
Yeah.
moving. I don't mean move jobs, move psychologically.
Yeah.
Like, keep moving. It's the moment you stop, you're going to be that person that's counting the days down to their retirement. And that is so boring.
100%. Amazing insights and advice. Thank you. That was so chock full of information and things to think about. So for our guests, I'm sure they're really appreciative of that.
Oh,
Because a lot of folks, we all go through it. It's just a matter of what are some different ways to consider it. Um,
yeah.
Anything that we didn't talk about that you want to share, or I mean, this whole podcast, I'm gonna have to listen to it probably 3 or 4 times because it's so good.
Oh.
But what is there anything else that you had thoughts that I didn't ask or something you wanted
Well, there was one thing, it's the kind of one piece of advice that I would give people, and think of everything else in this podcast episode ties to this one idea. And that is that, or one way of living, I should say, be your own hero. That in like, don't look around. And that is not a quote from me. I want to give credit where credit's
Yeah.
due. It was from Neil Peart from Rush, the drummer in Rush. People would come up to him and be like, "You're my hero, you're my hero." And he's like, be your own hero. There is nothing worse than going through life and looking to other people and feeling like you're not doing enough, or you're not good enough, or whatever it is. Wouldn't it be great if you could look in the mirror every day and see someone who is your hero and draw strength from that? So that is the life that you want to build, the professional life, and everything we've talked about kind of falls under that. I should have called that the book, that The Spark in the Dark should have been called that, but I discovered that too late. Maybe I'll write another book on
There you
that
go.
topic one day. But it's so important, because we can spend so much of our lives comparing ourselves to the image that people are putting out online, even instead of the real person behind that uh, facade, that social media facade that they've built.
Mhm.
So do it yourself.
Great advice.
Be that person for yourself.
Great advice. This has been fantastic. It has been so great. I really, first of all, I'm so thankful you walked into my life to be able to do
Oh,
this with me because you have something super special and you can give so much to people to understand different ways to think about some of these challenging points in life. So I'm so happy you've joined me today on the podcast, and I
oh.
can't thank you enough for being
Oh,
part of
I feel similarly, and I'm so glad we had the opportunity. And you gave a great talk when we were at Disrupt HR.
Oh,
I
thank you.
loved your talk, but not, and we, let's face it, we can't remember the content. It was so fast.
Right.
But it was your energy. It was your energy that really stood out for me.
Thank
And
you.
I'm like, this person is a great person that I'd like to get to know better. And we haven't had the chance because we've both been
I'm
living our
super
lives and running our
busy.
businesses. But now I'm so glad we've reconnected.
Me too, me too. And I think there'll be many, many more coffee chats over beer or coffee or whatever it is as well.
Beer and chips.
But thank you so much again for being part of it. I really appreciate it.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
for our guest, if you liked what you heard today, please share this podcast with your network. We're on Spotify or any channel that you listen to your various podcasts. Please give us a rating, and you can also follow us at Coffee with Convery on Instagram. This is Coffee or Convery, where we show you that success isn't always about climbing the corporate ladder. Sometimes it's about building your own jungle gym. So for now, take care and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.